Who's your family?
Black. We all family.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Black at the Movies, episode 13. I'm your host, YourFairySquadMother, or just Ashanti if you're nasty, if you want to be like that. And today is a very special day. We are celebrating both Mental Health Awareness Month and AAPI Month. And this is where it all culminates and comes together. And I'm so excited because I have someone as a guest who is one of my favorite online people. We've known each other via an unnamed website for quite some time. And this is probably the second time that we've seen each other's faces. Introducing absolute awesome published writer, Athena Dixon.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Of course. Did you like my intro?
I do. I was like the unnamed website. Yeah, I know what that one is.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it under wraps.
You know.
Nobody needs to know. It's fine. It's fine. And the girls that get it.
They do.
They do. And today we are talking about 9 Days, which is directed by Edson Oda. He is a Brazilian-Japanese director. And this is one of my easily top 10 favorite films, I think. I don't know. When did you first see it? Because I know it came out, it was supposed to release in 2020, and then the world stopped.
Yeah. I saw it actually before it was officially released, and that's because I technically illegally watched it. I knew I knew that it was coming out because at the time I was running a certain fan page, and I knew that they were showing it at select film festivals. And so all of the film festivals they were showing it at, you had to be in certain cities to watch. And this, right before it came out, I think it was the Sun Valley Film Fest. It was showing in New Jersey, New York, and somewhere else. And you could only watch, you could stream it, but you had to be there. So I live in Philadelphia, which is only across the bridge from Jersey. But I was like, where am I going to go to watch this and stream it? I'm just going to go park somewhere. So I used a VPN to say that I was in Jersey so I could watch it when it was premiering at the film festival.
I'm sorry. That's so cool to me.
Yes. I was like, I'm watching this by all means necessary. And I watched it as soon as it premiered at the film festival, probably maybe a couple weeks before it officially came out.
Yeah. That's so cool. I think we saw it, Devon and I, not DSG and I saw it in theaters in 2021 in one of my very, very favorite small theaters that happen to be all throughout California. It's called Lamel, and they have the best popcorn in the entire world. I don't care what anyone has to say. Better than iPick, okay? And that's saying a lot. Their popcorn is delicious.
I think I saw it the second time I saw it in the theater. There's a kind of a smaller theater here in Philadelphia called the Ritz. And so they play a lot of movies that don't get like big screen releases. So I saw 9 Days there and Blue Bayou and Beatrice at Dinner. So all these kind of movies that don't come out to like the larger theaters, they go to the Ritz. So I took my friends like, you have to see this movie. And so I took them to see it because I was like, I was so moved the first time I saw it that I was like, I have to take other people to watch it with me.
Me too. Yes. I saw it with Not DSG first, and then I immediately called my Auntie Gwen, and I was just like, you have to watch this film. Because I know while this film might not be everyone's taste, I guess, it's a little bit more on the art house side.
Yeah.
And it makes you think a lot more. I know that Auntie Gwen loves those kind of films. So I immediately, it was just like, I will pay for you to come and see this.
Yeah.
You have to see it.
I think they went for me off the strength. They're like, it's like, look, there's this Winston Duke movie. And y'all know how I feel. So I need you also to get on these trains and in these cars and come see it. And they both really liked it, which I was glad. And that they trusted me enough to understand, like, yeah, I had this like obsession with him, but this movie itself is not just about him. It's about so much more. And I want to share this experience with you. And so I was like, you have to go. And then I saw it a third time by myself at the same theater. It's very rare. There's only 2 movies that three movies I've seen more than once in the theater. And those are Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and 9 Days. Those are the only three I've ever seen multiple times. And the common denominator is the same, but I've been compelled because of the story matter and the subject matter of these films to see them multiple times.
Honestly, same. I mean, I'm a movie repeater in-house.
Yeah.
You know. But when it comes to going to the theaters, it's pretty much the same for me. Like back when I was in middle school and the Transformers movies were coming out, I was obsessed with Transformers. So of course I was seeing Transformers a whole bunch of times. But besides like Black Panther, 9 Days, and Wakanda Forever, there's no movie that I have gone back to see in the theater, spending my own money multiple times. So it has to be special, obviously.
It does.
It really has to be special. And I want to give a very specific trigger warning before we get into the content of this film. This does deal with themes of suicide and suicidal ideation and bullying. And just if you're having an existential crisis, this is probably not the best film for you to watch right now.
Yeah.
Maybe wait until the crisis is over.
Yeah, it's not. There's no hiding from it.
There's no hiding for it.
It's a through line the entire film. Be careful. I will also say 9 Days is one of the only physical DVDs that I own.
Yeah.
And really? I didn't even have a DVD player. I bought a DVD player. I have very few on physical media, and that's one of the. I think I have maybe 6 physical DVDs, and that's that I can think off the top of my head. Us, 9 Days, special edition Black Panther, and a couple of like indie films. Like my favorite movie is Lost in Translation, so I have that, and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. But it's one of the few movies where I was like, I have to physically own this because I am intent on studying it and watching it and immersing myself in enough ways that I need to like actually own this and stop renting it or trying to rent it or finding it on some shady site that may or may not infect my computer.
Right. And especially with the way that media is going right now between streaming and renting, especially where like video games and stuff are concerned.
Yeah.
It might be better to have a physical copy than to
actually own.
That you actually own instead of like buying it through Apple or something. So I'll tell the people, in case you have not seen this and you don't want to get this spoiled for you, then you should probably pause the video here and go watch the film. If you're in a place where you can't actually rent the film and you don't have any money, please DM me on either my personal Instagram or the Black of the Movies Instagram, and I will get you some money so you can actually watch this film. It's really, really good. So the film is kind of about Will, who is kind of living in this in-between dimension where he interviews souls for the opportunity to be alive on Earth.
Yes.
And he has to start the interview process again after one of his favorite souls that he has put into the position of life ends up killing themselves. And in the midst of interviewing all these different souls, he finds that he is faced with a lot of possibility of change and kind of a lot of adversity, but within his own self while he's interviewing these souls. And it is absolutely wonderful. Of course, Winston Duke is a household name.
Yes.
In our households, at least.
And it should be in everybody's.
It should be in everybody's household.
Get yourselves together.
Because he is extremely talented.
He is.
Extremely talented. I think he's like on the same thespian level as Denzel for me. You know, you don't really see a lot of really good character actors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that was one of the reasons. Like when I first heard that this movie was coming out, of course, my initial reaction was it's Winston Duke, so whatever he's in, I'm going to see.
Right.
But then after I found out what the movie was going to be about, who he was going to be playing in the movie, I was immediately like, "Yep, I have to see this," because I felt like it allowed him to flex muscles that people assumed he didn't have. Because for a lot of people, their first introduction to him was in Baku. And so even though he had been in SVU, even though he had been in Modern Family, I know the first time I ever knew who Winston Duke was is watching the film for the first time in the theater. And he comes on the screen and I'm like, oh my God, who is that? And then it started this multi-year obsession. But I was like, my whole view of him for a very long time was very much, he is this almost 6'6" tall, formally built man who is like in this very specific role. And so when I saw 9 Days was coming out, I was like, oh, he actually gets to flex his Yale MFA muscles and his theater background and actively get to act. And then I was also really intrigued because of the possibilities of him being this very specific body, this very specific background, of being this bigger Black man who is expected to exist in certain roles. So at that point, when 9 Days came out, you had him in Black Panther as in Baku. He had played a football player / like comedy relief on Modern Family. He had played a sexually assaulted football player on SVU. And I think Spencer Confidential came out before 9 Days, and he was an MMA fighter in that movie. So he had all these roles where he was being different people, but he didn't have the opportunity to really lean into a full-bodied experience. And so I was so happy to be able to see that, and immediately was like, I have to see this movie because of that.
Honestly, yeah. He didn't. I mean, of course, now we're post Wakanda Forever.
Mm-hmm.
So he definitely was given a lot more in order to build upon his character of M'Baku. But before that, it's basically nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So it was nice to see him not have to play a role where his brawniness is at the forefront.
Right. And too, I know that there was like this discourse when Wakanda Forever came out about him being like too soft in that movie. And I was like, people who are really fans are like, even if those movies don't exist in the same realm of each other, but it's a natural progression. So in 9 Days, you get this person who exists in this very big body who gets to be insecure and uncertain and afraid at times. And he gets to unfurl from the very first scene to the last scene. And the same thing happens in Wakanda Forever. And I think there's just this natural progression in his career where he's allowed to now, and the sad thing is he had to prove that he was something other than this big brawny action person, that he's had to prove that he has the ability to exist in these quieter spaces. And I think 9 Days was like the perfect introduction for people to be able to say, he does not have to exist as this one thing. People who don't believe that are always going to fall by the wayside. But I think that this was like the perfect post Black Panther like role for him, I think, because it allowed us to see a secondary side of him.
Right. Honestly. And I feel like, and let me know if you feel the same way. I feel as if a lot of films, of course, sub like Ryan Coogler's films or Michael B. Jordan's films, I don't think they really allow Black men to explore the full scope of the personality of that character. I don't think it's ever been pushed as much.
Yeah.
Of course, we're seeing it a little bit more lately, but I'm curious to know your thoughts on that.
I agree. I think that's why I fell into that website, because I was very interested in the other sides of that particular character. I think that I understand why these kind of like, I wouldn't even say two-dimensional, maybe like 2.5-dimensional characters in some ways exist in those films, is because they know that they have to follow a formula and they can only push the boundary so far. So for like something like Black Panther, I'm like, the fact that y'all got all that money and that push that you got, was the boundary breaking right there. Like they weren't going to let you do too much within the scope of the characters because they're like, you're lucky we're giving you this shot. And so you better make a film that's going to make this money back or you're not getting another one. And I think that that's why people had a lot of criticism outside of the obvious T'Challa issues in Wakanda Forever, is that in Wakanda Forever, we get to see the script and the directing allow them to have like a full, I won't say a full, but a fuller view of these characters. But it certainly is a couple of tiny steps. It's a step, but like those first few, like there wasn't a lot of depth because I don't think they had the opportunity to, because they were so shackled by just, you are Black people making a film. You better be happy to give you the money to make it. And will say that I do appreciate about the progression of those characters in the second movie was, especially in Baku too, was because in some ways it flipped what we were expecting. So you got Shuri just stoic, stone-faced, murderous revenge when you expected her to fall apart. And then you had Baku, who's very much like, I'm facing my own weaknesses, like physical weakness. Namor cracked your whole sternum. Like he cracked your sternum. So they flipped what it could have been. It could have been M'Baku from the first movie. It could have been the Shuri after the crazy loss in her life over the span of those two films just fell apart. And so I was glad that they got to have like a fuller experience and that they weren't kind of stuffed into traditional roles. But yeah, the first couple movies didn't have it, and I don't think they were able to have it. I would be interested to see what those films would have looked like had Ryan Coogler had like full on, like make the film that you want to make,
like full creative control.
Yeah, I do agree though.
Yeah, that's how I feel too, and I think that's why I love 9 Days so much, aside from the content of the story, but also because all the characters are so real.
Yeah.
And they're so tangible, you know? And that's why I love it. I think Winston Duke did a great job. Benedict Wong, I love him in everything that he's in. He's one of my absolute favorites. I hope to see him more often in films. Zazie Beetz did absolutely wonderful getting under the skin of Will constantly.
He did.
Absolutely did. And I had a lot of thoughts. I wrote a lot. I wrote a lot about all of my thoughts on here. I thought that I wonder if Will looked at the souls that he had previously chosen and all the souls that are on his POV TV setup. I wonder if he sees them almost as his children, because it feels like he takes on a very much fatherly role.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting to see him in that kind of space.
I think he does in some ways. But I did wonder, like, I think he did see himself as kind of like their father, especially because of the soul that passed. I think that if we look at it from a way of him treating himself as their father, like I think what ends up happening is that he it's almost like a regression. I think that at the opening of the film, he's this very loving, very involved father. That's why he's watching them so intently. Why he's
he's getting dressed up and stuff and waiting for the concerto to happen.
Right. Like, and he's like ready. And I think it's just like this pride and this joy that he's felt like he sent these really good and worthy souls out into the world. And to see that tragedy happen, that bulk of the middle of the film is really him regressing and disconnecting in a way, out of fear, not only for himself and maybe questioning his judgment, but also fear what it is to say. I'm like, I guess I should preface and say I don't have any kids, but I can imagine from my parents' perspective, the fear of sending your child, this thing that you hold so dear, out into the world and knowing the world is going to decimate it, given a half a chance.
Right.
And that's why through the film, we see him almost being like this helicopter parent, where he's just like, I have to dissect every bit of you because I have to make sure the next thing that I send out into the world is not going to be leveled. And so he goes into this like almost like this super strict dictator of a parent in a way, in his own way. But like I think that he had a regression, and it took that closing scene, which I know we will get to like reverse course. But I think he did see himself as their father, and I think that's why he was so impacted, because he realized this thing that he had made wasn't safe. He had no ability to care for it or to save it or to protect it from the world.
Right. And there's a line that Will's character says when he's arguing with Keo, because Keo, you know, is trying to be his friend.
Yeah.
Of course, we know he was trying his hardest. Of course, we know that like his role is to make sure that Will is making the right decisions.
Yeah.
And make sure that he is making sound decisions. And Keo wants so badly for Emma, the soul who has literally loved every single tiny bit of being alive.
Mm-hmm.
He wants so badly for him to choose Emma. And Will is like, she's too soft.
Yeah.
She's too vulnerable. And he says, so what, I'm supposed to continue to send flowers when other people continue to send pigs to eat them. And that was one of the best lines I had heard.
It would be so interesting I wish that there was like, we had like a kind of a behind the scenes hidden scene thing where he's questioned about whether or not, by not sending out the soft souls, by not sending out the sensitive souls, by not sending out the souls full of joy, he's only making the world that he's sending whatever soul he picks into worse. Because now there's nothing to counteract the pigs.
Thank you.
There's nothing.
That's what I was thinking. Because, and again, spoilers. If you're still watching, you haven't watched the movie, you're crazy. Again, spoilers. I really don't think that Kane was the best option.
He wasn't.
He's gonna get down there and he's gonna be either a school shooter or worse.
Yeah. Like he's making the problem worse. And I know that Will's thought is like he can survive. Like survival and thriving and making the plane of existence better are markedly different things. And I don't think that he considered in his own grief and in his own fear and his own sadness that he was transferring that into the world through the soul that he picked, because it's exactly what he did.
And of course, you know, I don't think he's considering any of the things that we're saying, of course, because he is blinded by his own pain and his own grief, which sucks. I think the part that hit me the most, both in the theaters and then also just watching it casually over this last week, the thing that hit me the most is when he starts combing through every single recording or file that he had of Amanda's life to try to catch it and be like, there has to be something. How did I not notice that this was happening? Which is typically what people do after a loved one commits suicide.
I know that, like, I guess if you mentioned at the top that I'm a writer, and one of the things that I talked about in my first book was my suicide attempt and how it was just a regular work day. And I was driving on my way home and I was just like, okay, I'm done. And I tried to drive my car into the back of a semi truck. And I was just like, I don't have the capacity to exist anymore. And I think what he was looking for, he was never going to find, because my family and friends were like, when that book came out, they were like, we didn't know that it was that bad. We knew that you weren't okay, but we didn't think that it got into that point where you weren't wanting to live anymore. And the only reason that I didn't do it, the only reason that I stopped myself like a hair from doing it completely, was because I wanted my parents to have an open casket funeral. And I was like, if I hit this truck, it's not going to happen. And so all they would have seen was like the end result. They wouldn't have seen like the slow breaking. They wouldn't have seen the internal. So they wouldn't have seen like that kind of the fracturing. And I think he's looking through all of these signs in the days of her life and realizing that a lot of that stuff is never going to be external. A lot of that stuff, even he's seen from her perspective, I'm like, you're not feeling what she's feeling. You're just seeing how she's interpreting in the world. So you're never going to find it. And I think too, he was reliving his own failures in his life. And
while he was alive.
Right. And then now really looking at what he could have done for her, but like, were you really looking for what you could have done for yourself? And you were trying to find your own answers through her, and you couldn't find your own, and you couldn't find her. So the natural reaction for you was to, both of us were not good enough for this world, and so I'm going to send what the world expected me to be back, not realizing that you're doing a disservice to the world.
Honestly, all of that. Honestly, it's so interesting to see him comb through all of those things and then have Keo bring in another interviewer who had chosen someone to live that happened to be cousins with the person that he chose to live. And he immediately was like, no, I don't accept any of this. Which, of course, the stages of grief, you're going to deny things. And like you said, none of your family members knew. The same way none of my family members knew. I had 2 different suicide attempts throughout middle school and high school. And no one knew anything until I felt like I was in a safe enough space to tell someone in 2015.
Yeah.
And I'm sure my mom, if those things had happened and actually like went through and I achieved when I was attempting, I'm sure my mom would have felt very similar to Will. Like I would have known, I should have known something.
Right.
While searching for things and then also beating yourself up in the process.
Yeah.
So I thought that it was very intuitive, that point in there, because Keo wants him to move forward. But he can't.
And it's interesting that he is saying that the world is like decimating softness and the world is eating the flowers, but there's a joy and a flower and a light in your limbo, like, and it exists there.
And
so
you're decimating it
right,
yourself.
And you're doing like you're doing the thing that they did to you on Earth, and you're doing it so casually. You're not paying attention. Now you see, like, Keo is joyful and light through the vast majority of the film, but you see there's starting to be fractures in him during that film, because you can only be rebuffed, you can only be like ignored or pushed away so many times before it starts to dim you. And I think that what I appreciated in some ways is I think Keo himself realized that, and he was like, I can't save him and save myself too. But he was still willing to show up as necessary for this person. But yeah, I think that Will just had this very, I won't say the whole film, but the first 75% of the film, he had he was getting in his own way. And by getting his own way, he was hurting 2 different versions of the world by trying to work through his own grief and his own pain.
Yeah. Well, I do like throughout that process of him really shooting himself in the foot, he's also granting these extremely magical end of existence wishes.
Yes. Which are some of my favorite parts of the movie.
Oh man. It's so, and whoever the composer is, I got to find out who he is. The composer is absolutely wonderful. I want that music to just be playing as I'm sitting at the park.
Yeah, that the one that kind of hit me the most because of the combination of the visuals and the music was the biking scene. Like,
oh my gosh, yes.
Music, and then when the cherry blossoms start falling, I'm just like sitting there like, oh my God, this is beautiful. And you know that it's the end of something's life cycle, but you're also like, this is so beautiful. This is so beautiful. And that music A plus. Like I put that score up there with If Beale Street Could Talk scored, Nicholas Brittle, and the first Black Panther score, which I still listen to like nobody's
so
business.
good.
But yeah, those kind of and those scores are like, but that music is just like it sets every one of those scenes like beautiful. Like that beach one, when it comes to the end, and like there's that realization that it's over. Like I was in the theater, like Athena, you cannot cry. you can't. I did, but
I did.
It's beautiful. And I think too, what I really liked about those scenes, not only were they were an example of like just the care and the tenderness that we can give each other, is that it allowed us to see a body and a person who is not traditionally shown to give that kind of care and concern to others. And so when I mentioned earlier about like appreciating the fact that Winston wasn't in this traditional kind of like brawny, stoic, traditional man role, was that now you get to see this very tall, big Black man get to be soft and tender and accommodating to somebody else, even though you see him fighting through his own issues, fighting through his own grief, that he's not, in those moments, he's not taking it out on them. That he's like, even though I'm conflicted, even though I don't know what I'm going to do, I have enough love left in me, enough tenderness left in me, that I'm going to show this to someone else. And we don't get to see depictions like that very often, especially in a non-romantic way. It just like
very not all of it was so platonic, which I loved. Even when one of the souls did feel feelings for him, he was still so gentle with her. And especially like after the biking scene, you know, she starts to have the realization, oh no, it's over. And I could evaporate from existence at any moment. And she has those moments where she's hyperventilating and she's freaking out and she's begging and pleading. And he holds her hands. And I think he's humming. What song is he humming?
I don't remember.
I think he might be humming You Are My Sunshine.
Maybe it is.
I gotta find that out.
I gotta find out. And I will say too, not even just the experiences that he does for them, but the active, like you see him through the course of the film building these things, and you really don't realize at first what he's doing, but like the care that goes into saying, what do you like, what would you want if you could just have whatever you wanted, and I'm going to use my hands and my body to physically make this come possible for you, so you can go out of this existence with something beautiful. Like that I'm like, oh my God. But like that doesn't get shown in the vessel of somebody like him. And so I appreciate that the director and the casting, they were like, we want to make him kind of like a vessel that is unexpected and show people that it shouldn't be. That why can't this be the norm? Why can't this be normal? Why can't we not sexualize him or romanticize him and then the people he interacts with? I like that they didn't make there be some kind of like pseudo relationship between him and Emma, because it would have been really easy to do.
It would have been very easy to do.
Yeah, and then it would have flipped. I think it would have muddied and cheapened the film as a whole had they made it be like, oh, at the end, they're going to be in the little house in the desert together. Like, no, he had a job. And even though I don't agree with his decision, he did it with integrity. He doesn't mean he doesn't have regrets. He doesn't have doubts about what he did, but he did what he was supposed to do. And I think her purpose was to make him unfurl. And she served that purpose in a very platonic way. And that's all it had to be. So I do appreciate that they didn't take it in the commercial route that they could have taken it.
See, now, just the whole film is beautiful. It's super beautiful, and I think the main gripe that I tend to have with films, actually, it's the first bullet point that I wrote in my notes, and I said I love films when they are astonishingly beautiful, but the story doesn't falter, because that tends to happen. Especially nowadays when A24 is going ham on films and kind of releasing the bulk of some of our best films right now. And it was refreshing to see 9 Days and see them try and actually achieve to be this art housey thing, but also not be so far out of the plane of understanding to where everyone can get something out of it.
Right. Yeah, I think
that's so nice.
I think that's the problem. I think some people would see a film about this and think that it was inaccessible. And I think that it wasn't. Like, I'm a person who I don't go to the movies very often. When I go, it's because I really, really, really want to see something. And when I see films that are on a smaller scale, even me, like I am a writer and I've spent my entire life in some kind of artistic space, sometimes feel shut out of these experiences in these places because I'm like, my mind cannot wrap itself around the entirety of what's going on. Kind of felt like that with Beatrice at dinner, but it's like still a running joke with me and my friends about what the ending was about. But I think that this film, for its subject matter, does everyone a really good service. That even if you come away with this treating it as like I think some people will treat it as like a pseudo rom-com, and it's like the what if they would have, and then but they're still going to say you have two souls who lost themselves to the world in a very tragic way, Will and Amanda, and you have another soul, Emma, who you're going to be rooting for because you think that she deserves the chance to live, and you're not going to get what you want. You're going to get the person that you're like, there's 75,000 of him being reborn every minute. You're the majority in the world. And now you get another one. And so you're going to be angry at that. But all of the film takes the time to make you have some kind of emotional experience, whether it be anger because you are like a person who feels like we don't need another younger white man who is hard and probably going to be ruthless. Yeah, and ruthless in the world and take what he wants by any means necessary. Or if you identify with Emma, who you feel like is just light and joy and childlike in some ways, and that she deserves to be in the world, but because she is a woman, she's not allowed to go, or because she's too soft, she's not allowed to go. So you're going to feel anger or a connection with that. Or if you feel connection with Will, where I just want to be by myself in my house drinking my tea, and I don't want you to bother me, and I want to do my job by myself and leave me alone. But then coming to the realization that you need somebody. When we talk about our favorite scenes, I'll kind of like get into that. But yeah, I think that there's something for everybody, and I appreciate the fact that they didn't make it opaque for the sake of being opaque, which I think sometimes in artistic spaces, whether it be film or writing or music, depending on the genre, people think that opaqueness equals seriousness, and it equals professionalism, and it equals that this needs to be taken seriously, but you're alienating so many people that your message kind of gets lost. And I don't think 9 Days fell into that trap at all.
Right. It is so interesting. I feel like this film definitely got snubbed in a lot of awards and wasn't even, it was completely glazed over by bigger awards like the Oscars and stuff, which is crazy to me because of not only just the film's contents, but the level of acting.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me. And, before I go on a rant, because I will do that, as you mentioned, let's get into the favorite scenes. Because of, the nature of this film, we are only going to do one scene each. But as you could probably tell by watching this, we already love this film. And it is extremely hard to choose just one scene, but we're going to try.
Yes.
And I'm going to let you go first.
Okay. My favorite scene after thought and rewatching and debating is the closing monologue. I originally was like, no, because that's like the easy answer. But I think visually, visually I was going to pick the bike scene because it inspired such creativity and thought process of me wanting to write something. but emotionally is what I needed to do in terms of like connecting with the movie. And the closing monologue, the very first time I saw it, I watched it with my mouth covered, like the entire thing, and then I ran it back. And it was the most emotionally resonating piece of the entire movie for me for dual reasons. And I don't know if you want me to get into those or you want to tell me yours first.
Please do, because the funny thing is that was also my favorite scene. Mm-hmm. So I want to hear everything.
Okay, so the first reason is because, so something that I talked about earlier is just about Winston Duke. Because I was so happy that this man got the opportunity to flex his acting chops, that he had the opportunity to do this beautiful multi-minute monologue that encompassed in not just his body, but like his face, like his emotions, he went from being like almost terrified to like just screaming and joyful and stomping around the desert. And it just showed such a good range of his acting ability. And I was so proud because I'm like, people probably don't expect you to be able to do this. People like, oh, you went to Yale and got your MFA. And like, but that's not an easy feat. No, like that's a big deal. Like, you know, what other actors have gone to Yale for an MFA, and he's in that. Like his class was like him, like Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, Jonathan Lupita. Majors, Lupita, and there's another one. But yeah, like those are like Lupita has an Oscar, and that was his like campus guide. I'm like, you think like. So I was so proud that he got to use his acting skills and the fact that he was able to like give such a range of emotion, and like it was like a 5-minute monologue, I think, at the end.
Yeah, it was about 5 minutes.
Yeah. And then the second thing that I really, really loved is that emotionally for me, I was like, yep, this is where I need to concentrate, because that full range of emotions that he got to show was very much parallel to my life. So he starts off the scene very kind of like sheepish because he knows he's cast her out into the desert and she's about to not exist anymore. And so he's approaching her with this like trepidation and a fear of being rejected. And I know so often in my life, I've always felt like, I don't know if people are really going to like me, or maybe I said something or did something wrong and I got to approach them like with my hands up, like I'm here not to cause you any harm. Please accept me. Please look at me. And so that very first minute or so, he's afraid. And then when he starts to recite the monologue, he's like reciting it like a little kid doing a church play. Like, I don't want to really do this, but you said you wanted to hear it. So here it is. And then once he realizes she's engaged with him and she opens up, he just goes full body with it. And I think that I've approached my life in the last couple of years where like, if I am allowing myself to trust people, to care for me and to listen to me and to give me space to be who I am, I can say and do worlds of things I've always been afraid to do. And so emotionally, I was like, this is what I want my life to look like. I want to be able to recognize the shell that I'm in, recognize the limitations that I'm putting on myself, and then trusting not only myself, but other people in my orbit to allow myself to fully open. And so by the time I got to the end of that scene, I was just like sobbing, like, this is beautiful. And this is what I want my life to be. Not this like neat end, but this like constant unfurling, no matter what circumstances show up.
I love those reasons, dude. That's so interesting that you mentioned that he starts out the beginning he does start it out very sheepishly. Mm-hmm. Like he's going to be judged.
Yeah.
And he doesn't want to be, which is why he said no the first time where she requested that as her end of existence wish. Mm-hmm. So it was nice to see him go through it. And I remember watching it the first time, I was just like, dude, run. Go.
Get her.
Go. Run. And it was nice to see.
And it was the only one that he fulfilled that didn't involve him having to make something. Like it was like all the distance, like the narrative distance, the physical distance was gone. It was just like a raw human to human experience in a way that it was human to human in the other ones, but this one was like, I can't make you something. I have to give of myself.
Yeah, this is a piece of himself that he did not want to reveal.
Exactly. And then she takes into whatever exists on the other side of this existence with her.
And I love that final monologue so much. I watched a behind the scenes thing that they did for the Oscars.
Mm-hmm.
And the monologue that he is saying is from Walter Whitman's Song of Myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I had first seen that film, I was in a pretty bad place. You know, it's 2021.
Mm-hmm.
It's a year after all of this stuff is happening and the world is completely different. And this might be my one or second time going to the movies in that year. And I was not in a great space mentally. And I felt as if I was taking a lot of life for granted because I was so focused on the things that I can't control. And I'm trying not to get emotional while I'm talking about this right now. But that ending monologue alone had me leaving the theater being so upset with myself for not seeing the small bits of goodness within each day. And it made me kind of grateful to be alive, which doesn't happen very often. But for Will to be giving this piece of himself and putting it on display and talking about the literal like points of it inside of that monologue is him being grateful for being able to take in air and seeing the small magic and being able to make out grass in the distance, or to feel how his tongue moves and how his voice reverberates within his chest. These are things that we as humans take for granted, and we just go throughout our day and we have financial problems and there's war going on in the world and we're not able to do all the things that we want to do. And some people may have more privilege than we do, but then we get to go outside and sit in the sun and see everything that life has to offer. And I think that's why this film is so important and near and dear to my heart, is because I had been taking all of that for granted in the midst of all of my laundry list of mental health issues. And being able to see that and be reminded in those moments. And I think that's why I chose that as my favorite scene as well. I mean, besides like the bike scene, which we talked about, it's the whole movie. It's just so good.
It is.
And I need more people to watch it and talk about it, because I feel like it went under the radar.
It did. And the sad thing is like, I think that it came out at both the best and the worst time. So it came out in 2021. And so I spent the bulk of the first waves of COVID lockdowns by myself in my apartment. And so it was a very isolating time. And so watching like the first 75% of this movie, I was like, I'm doing the same routine. I'm getting up, I'm making whatever, I'm going to turn on the TV or the music. And then my life has this very strict, isolated pattern to it. And so I think that it came out at the perfect time, because people were forced to be, well, not everybody, because again, privilege and essential workers were always in the world. People were forced to slow down in a way where this kind of movie would resonate. And the subject matter of it, the physicality of the movie would resonate. But I think it also came out at the worst time, because that was when everybody was like, we're like a year in at this point. Everybody's anxious to get outside. Everybody's attention is everywhere else. And I think this kind of film, in some ways, may have needed to be seen in a communal space. I think because it demands of us like this reconnection to humanity, and it's very difficult to get that connection when you're not around other people. And so I think that seeing this film in a smaller like art house setting or a smaller local theater would have connected people in a very beautiful way. And we just weren't in the space at the time to have that happen. And so I really wish that they would put it back in theaters. Even like a limited run or something like that. And I think it would be cool. This is probably never going to happen, but it would be amazing that there's somebody who did something where like pieces of media, whether it be music or books or movies that came out during that time frame, especially things that having to do with isolation and loneliness and the lack of human connection, could be in some kind of special weekend package where people who didn't have the chance to experience it can experience it together.
That's such a good idea, Athena.
It would be amazing.
So when are you doing it?
When somebody sponsors it, people help me plan this festival.
Honestly,
yes,
get
please.
the community in. Community work is like super big. Just get the community in. Let's go.
Yes, I would be. I think that there's certain experiences like, and too, I think it would be a good opportunity because even though the world's back open, and that's questionable, I think that it would help people connect in a way that we're still missing. Like there's been a lot of discussion over the last couple of years about people missing third spaces, and that's a small step. Like you might not be going to a bowling league every week, or you might not be going to a book club every week, but if you can have a small community experience, and even if you link up with one other person, that's a duo or a connection in the world that didn't exist before. So yeah, I think that it just came out at the best and worst time during the world's shutdown.
Honestly, same. Hope maybe if enough people watch this,
they might.
Maybe
we can have
we
can have Mr. Duke maybe possibly host the.
That would be everything.
If you see this, sir, please.
Right, if you're watching this,
please do it. Let's have a private screening.
Just a private screening, maybe like 25 people.
Yeah, a little question and answer after. Come on, please.
Yeah,
pick this.
Wrap it up.
I will get on a plane. Just tell me where to be.
Right. Just tell me where to be. Okay, let's get into some trivia.
Yes.
Because I done already cried. So now it's time to ask you some questions.
Okay.
All right. And these are fairly easy ones.
Okay.
So, first question, true or false?
Okay.
9 Days is Edson Oda's first feature film.
True.
You're right. See, you got this.
Hopefully.
And it's crazy that this is his first film.
I know, which is crazy.
To come out the gate, guns a-blazing.
Yeah, he's been doing commercials before. And then he was like, hey, take this. And we're like, great, thanks.
It's crazy to see. He did great. And I can't wait to see what he does next.
Hopefully he gets another opportunity because I haven't heard anything. And I'm like, how did you watch this and not give this man money to do something else? I don't understand.
Right. Especially seeing as though he's the sole writer of the film. What are we doing? Hollywood, call him up immediately.
They're making remakes. They don't care.
I know. We could talk about that a little later. Okay, second one. What narrative podcast does Winston Duke play a main character in?
Batman Unburied.
Yes, it is so good. Have you listened to it?
I was kind of upset that the second season of it was not him returning as Batman. Because I was all amped up and I was like, ooh, it's coming. Like, are you serious? But let me tell you this. He scratches things in my brain, but when he did that transition, it was like episode 6 or 7. He did the transition into the Batman voice. I was like, oh my God. I about died.
I know.
I about died. Yes.
Listen, I don't even like Batman. I am not. When it comes to the DCU, I love villains.
Mm-hmm.
I've always loved villains. I've never been a fan of Batman, but you best believe I was sat.
Every episode.
Every single episode as they were coming out. I'm like, I'm sat. Yes. And then after I listened to all of them, I'm like, not DSG. I need you to get on Spotify immediately and go listen to this.
Please. Like that was like the best. Like when they said he was going to be playing Batman, and I was like, okay,
right,
sure. What do you mean he's playing Batman? And then I really liked the story.
Yes.
Like I really liked the story too. So, and I like that it wasn't like every other supporting character in that. Like Hassan Minaj as Joker.
The Riddler.
The Riddler, sorry, the Riddler. It was top tier. Like so I liked it like it was so good. I haven't listened to the second season. Like I said, I was a little disappointed that they didn't run it back for like a new adventure, but I'll re-listen to it.
Maybe. Apparently yesterday, Winston Duke was interviewed for The Fall Guy. And he mentioned that he would love to play Batman in James Gunn's DCU ventures.
Look, at this point, just give it to him.
Just give it to him.
I need that, and I need him to have like I'll write it. Okay, Winston, if you listen to this, I will write the rom-com script. I will write it. I got ideas already. I really why I don't want you to be the sidekick. I don't want you to be the best friend. I want you to be the main male character. I will write it. Please.
Please. He deserves it. Let's go.
Like the audience is there.
He'll carry it. And the audience is there.
There. Please.
They've been there. We all saw the BuzzFeed video of him reading the thirst tweets, okay? People will come to the seat.
They will. Look, please. I know he's like, look, whatever, I'll write whatever it is. Because I know he said before he wanted to be in a kind of like a African version of Game of Thrones. Who's writing it? I need to know.
Who's writing it and who's funding it? Let's go.
Is he going to show up in this Ryan Coogler, Michael B. Jordan vampire thing that's going on right now? They've added new cast members like every other day. I'm like,
I know. I'm waiting. I'm like, do I need to go back to being a production assistant on the weekends? Because if you guys call me, I will go.
Please. I was an extra on Creed 2 because I was like, we gotta go. Like he was like right there. I was like, oh my God. Beautiful. Okay, I'm sorry. I went on a tangent.
You're good. You're good. Okay. Final trivia question.
Okay.
What is Zazie Beetz' first language?
Oh God. German?
Yes.
Yes.
Her dad's German. I was so surprised to learn this. Her dad is German. And she was born in Berlin. And that is her first language. She speaks German, English, and French fluently.
Oh, do it up because I can't.
Me either. Her and Lupita.
Yeah.
They're all the way up here.
I'm like, I can read some Spanish. Speaking of the slowest sentences in the world, but I can't imagine. I wish I could be fluent in another language. I really wish I could. It's just, I'm old enough where my brain is like, it's not going to happen.
Honestly, I can speak conversational French. That's it. And that's mostly because I went through a phase in college. And I was like, yes, French, let's go. And I took a French class specifically for that. And then I forgot everything. But I can tell you that backpack is sacadou in French. So there's that.
That's how I'm in Spanish. Like I took 4 semesters of Spanish in college. Spanish only courses. Got a B. And here's Spanish every day at work. And I can get the basics. But if you actually start talking to me, I'm like, I have no idea what you're saying. You have to slow down. You have to like
run it back
level, like 5-year-old level, like write it down. I can read it, but speaking it, absolutely not.
Oh man. Honestly, yeah. Well, I love having you and I love talking to you because you always bring so much insight into everything.
Yeah.
And I feel like you're one of the only people who will fully be into the special interests that I have.
I'm a little obsessed sometimes. My hyperfixations are real.
So real.
Yeah. But real, but also like creatively real. Like there is like an art and a real analysis to have about this film, and hopefully others that he'll do in the future. But if you want to talk about, please ask me. I can talk about stuff all the time.
Oh, I will be DMing you constantly about
Please.
nonsense and foolishness.
Please.
Well, before I let you go, I have one more question for you. And not trivia, but I guess you could say trivia about yourself.
Okay.
If there was a movie about your life, who would be the main artist that you would have on the soundtrack?
Ooh. Oh gosh. Let me think what the vibe of my movie is going to be first.
Okay.
I'm generally melancholy, so it's going to be like a little darker film. So I'm going to go. Nina Simone.
Okay.
For like a jazzy vibe. But if it's a modern version of my life, Alex Isley.
Ooh, my mom loves Alex Isley.
Yeah. But Nina Simone, because I think I can see certain scenes of my life fitting with certain songs. So yeah, that would be my first choice.
I love that. You know, I'm very similar to you. There's a lot of melancholy in this body. And I think for those downtimes, for me, it would be Emily King.
Okay.
Because she definitely fits that plane. And then for the uptimes, even my uptimes are kind of mellow as well.
Yeah.
So I would probably say Smino, just to add in some sort of hip hop. I love his song Matinee. That's my absolute favorite.
I'll say if it's based off my Spotify rap for the last 2 years, it's going to have to be Kendrick Lamar and Victoria Monet.
Hey,
like those are the top two for the last 2 years. Yeah, like I think out of this last year, my top 5 songs, 3 of them were Victoria Monet, and the other 2 were Madison McFerrin and Annie. Those are like my top 5 this past year.
You know what I just thought about? If they make another like 007 movie, of course, you know, whoever is going to be the main character, that's fine. Whatever. Victoria Monet needs to be the one to make that song. Like the official song for it, akin to Shirley Bassey's Goldfinger. Ooh. I'm going to need Victoria Monet.
I can see that. This. Oh, I can see that. Yeah, I agree.
Her
Again,
voice would fit so
Hollywood,
well.
We need a couple things. We need next season of Batman Unburied with Winston. We need him in the actual Batman movie.
Yeah.
We need the Winston rom-com. We need Victoria Monet on the James Bond soundtrack. And we need Edson Oda to have his next film financed.
Thank you.
Those are the 5 demands.
Those are the 5 demands. Have your people call our people.
Thanks.
And that's all. Thank you very much.
We appreciate that.
Well, thank you again for coming. Thank you for listening to all of my different rants.
Thank you for having me, letting me ramble about everything under the sun.
Of course. Your rambles are always welcomed. And thank you, viewers, for watching and getting through all of our hobnobbing and guffawing here.
Yes.
And we really, really appreciate it. Please, please, please like, comment, subscribe, share it with a friend. Go watch 9 Days. And if you do not have the money to rent it, DM me. I will send you money. I promise you. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.